I'm in the middle. I'm 47 years old, so I'm officially in midlife. I have to admit that now. I'm in the sandwich generation, taking care of both elders and children. And I'm straddling two different industries, high-tech and clean tech. So what I want to talk about today is a lot of the learning and unlearning I've had to do along the way. One of the ways that midlife is often portrayed is a period of stagnation. But for me, at least personally, it's been a period of transformation. I'm in one of the most active periods of learning in my life. And that's because I'm learning the things that I care about the most. Also, at this point in my life, I'm actively unlearning baggage that I don't need anymore. Let me tell you how I got here. About 3 years ago, I had been in the high-tech industry for 18 years. I was wrapping up a great run at an enterprise software company where I'd risen to executive positions, had really great mentors. We talked a lot about mentors earlier today. Had a lot of great projects and impact, and had really deep relationships that had been built up. But it was time for me to leave that company, and I realized that the work itself, I really loved the people, but the work itself wasn't exciting me anymore. So I wasn't sure what to do next, so I took some time off. But then I had one of those run-ins with mortality that really crystallize and make you reevaluate your priorities. My father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And those moments sear your soul, but they also make you really clearly understand what is the most important to you. They also make you realize how time is precious. The time that you spend at work, the time that you spend with your family, the time you spend caring for a dying parent. My father passed away 6 months after his diagnosis. So over time, as I started to recover from grief and exhaustion, I realized that I was actually ready to get back into work. And a blessing that I was able to take time off to care for him. But then I was at a career crossroads. What should I do next? Should I stay in software? Then I looked at my motivations. I realized that staying in software was going to be easy. I had a track record, I had a network. And it was also going to feed my ego. I could get the next great title. I could go for a brand name company, burnish my reputation. But at midlife, I realized those things were leaving me empty. I wanted to find what was going to align with my values. How did I want to spend my precious time? And as I looked at the things that were most important to me, I really wanted to combat climate chaos. Climate change is a vast understatement. I call it climate chaos. And I wasn't interested in working tech for tech's sake. So I started looking around. Where can I apply my skills and experience to help combat climate chaos? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a policy expert. What can I do? So I started looking around and investigating. I stumbled upon this industry called Cleantech. I'd never heard of it 3 years ago. Didn't really know it existed. And so I found it really intriguing. Certainly its values called to me. But it was also very fuzzy. I wasn't sure would my skills apply. So I started investigating, and I found a lot of these buzzwords, some of the things that we've heard about from the last few speakers. Machine learning, big data, IoT. Like, I know this stuff. I know this stuff. I know this from the software world. Should be really easy to cross over. I'll just apply those skills. So then I did the next round of digging, which is, of course, in the professional world, to go to LinkedIn. So I had a pretty big LinkedIn network. I'm a power user of LinkedIn. And this vast network I had of high-tech power people, all over the Silicon Valley, around the world. One first-degree connection into the clean tech world. Frankly, I was shocked. This was just proof positive, and someone mentioned it earlier when I was out there chatting. Clean tech and high tech, there's a lot of shared buzzwords. And there's a lot of, commonality in the geographic footprint. There's a lot of focus in the Bay Area. But these are two parallel universes. And that means there's not enough flow of learning between the two. But I was lucky that one connection, his name is Raj, good friend of mine. He was at a company called AutoGrid, and he introduced me in, and they happened to have a need for my skills. So AutoGrid, which is an energy flexibility management software company, so I could apply my software skills, they decided to take a risk on me, and I decided to take the risk of moving into a new sector. So I realized as I was making this plunge into a new area, after I had got really cushy and comfortable in the software world, I had to unlearn listening to my ego. After you get to a certain point in your life, it's like, oh, next title, the next thing. I had a lot of peer pressure to keep moving up the ladder on the track that I was on. I had to unlearn that ego, and I had to really look at my values, which the time off with my family really helped me crystallize where I wanted to prioritize my time. So don't let your ego win over your values. And now that I've done that, and now I've been in clean tech for the last few years, I'm having fun again. I'm passionate about what I do. And that's not because it's easy. This is a crazy industry. Cray-cray. There have been a lot of ups and downs, and it is hard. But I feel like that work, that effort, is worthy of my time, my precious time. I've also learned a lot of things along the way. And there's some interesting things that I've observed because I have come from a different industry. I think there's a couple different things that the clean tech industry can learn, broadly speaking, to help it mature and grow up and have the full impact. First is around how the industry is financed. And this is particularly around the energy sector, which is the part of clean tech that I know best. So there is a bias, because this industry, the energy sector, grew up on big capital investments. Utility rate structures are based on capital spending and on project finance. And I'm not saying that project finance isn't relevant. It is extraordinarily relevant. A lot of clean tech projects are built on big capital investments. They're done project by project. But there is a lot of transformation in this industry where things are moving from CapEx to OpEx, where you have new business models, software companies that are actually being used to optimize and manage all that capital hardware. Or entire businesses that are now offering things as a service. Mobility as a service, energy efficiency as a service. But the investment community still has a bias towards project finance. So this is where it can learn from HighTech, because HighTech is used to these as a service business models, things that are more OpEx looking. Clean tech investors, particularly ones that come from an industrial background or an energy and utilities background, need to unlearn the old viewpoint of project finance and broaden their thinking on how they look at risk, opportunity, and value. The second general area of learning that I think the clean tech industry could benefit from is around scaling and commercialization. Now this is a young industry. There are a lot of startups, and almost all startups struggle with how do you scale? Oh, how do I productize? How do I find the right markets? How do I compete more effectively? So that's normal, but there's a couple differences that I've seen. One big difference that I've seen between clean tech and high tech. In high tech, this is kind of a funnel of how companies grow up. So you have a lot of startups competing, gets winnowed down to a good number of mid-sized companies that are kind of growing and scaling, and then you end up with a few big winners at the end. Clean tech doesn't really look like this. It looks more like this. So you have a lot of startups, then you have the big players at the end. Ford, Siemens, GE, Shell, PG&E, the utility companies. And a lot of the small startups are getting gobbled by the big strategic players. And that's not wrong in and of itself. That can be the right thing to do. But there are very few mid-sized companies, very few companies that have grown to a commercial scale. You can think of like a handful, maybe Sunrun and Tesla. And, those are also tough gigs right now. So it's become a crutch for the industry. If we don't learn how to grow to commercial scale, that means we haven't figured out a systemic way to sustain these businesses so that they can actually make the impact on climate chaos that we want them to. So the industry has to unlearn this crutch and invest in how to scale. Now, where does that come from? How does it happen? From looking at the kinds of skills that are valued. The industry has to invest in, recruit for, find people who have the skills beyond those early startup stages. Because the skills are different. How do you commercialize a product? How do you find a market? How do you build a really healthy, scalable organization? How do you scale processes, which sounds really boring, but you've got to do it. So the industry has to learn to recruit for those skills, value them, invest them. And therefore, it's going to have to bring in outsiders probably. And trust that they can ramp up and that the organizations know how to integrate them in. So in my personal experience, I got lucky. When I was speaking with the folks at AutoGrid, I had experience in commercialization and scaling, and so they brought me in. But why did I just say that I was lucky? Why did I just say I was lucky? I spent 2 decades building those skills. I've made a lot of impact at the companies I've worked at. And I hustled to break into this industry. So why did I just say I was lucky? It's because there's another bad habit that I'm still unlearning, which is that of self-doubt or imposter syndrome. That feeling that you're not good enough, that you didn't earn this. And it's something that too many of us women have had to fight because we've had our self-confidence undermined by society, sometimes by family, by Russian math teachers, and by ourselves. How many of you feel this on a regular basis? So if you do, you have to fight that feeling. You have to fight that feeling. You are dedicated, committed, brilliant women, and you have value to offer. You wouldn't be here otherwise. So if you're not clear on what value you bring, get clear on it. Talk to the people you work with. Where have you had the most impact? Talk to your mentors, your colleagues. Get clear on your value. Build on it if you're still early and you want to build those skill sets. Focus on that. And then trumpet that and unlearn anything, that little voice, or the real voices in the room who would tell you anything otherwise, that you aren't of value. Get clear on your value and also get clear on your values. Now, this room, given the context of this conference, most of you probably are pretty clear on your values. But if you're not, where do you want to put your time, your precious time? Both between family and work. What kind of organization do you want to be in? What kind of culture do you want to be in? Does it align with your values? Other speakers are talking about that today. That's critical. So when you bring your value and your values to Cleantech, we can really help transform this industry. Because this is a young and nascent industry. It has a lot of learning to do, and frankly, it's already got some unlearning of bad habits to do. So you are all practitioners and leaders in this industry. So help the industry unlearn outdated assumptions, fixed viewpoints that are no longer serving it. Bring your value and new perspectives on how to look at risk and value and opportunity. Broaden your skill set, your own personal skill set, but also who do you work with? Who do you hire? Who do you bring onto your board? So when you bring new learning to this industry and your value and your values, you're going to be able to rock clean tech and transform this world. Thank you.